Lovely to meet you, Matthew.
You as well. I've seen you on my Facebook a few times and saw your stuff pop up, and I've been meaning to reach out to talk to you about maybe potentially getting together on your show here. And then I don't know why today I just finally thought, you know what, I'm just gonna take a moment and message you and see what happens.
It's that time of year, right? It's that time of year where we just go, right, let's try something different. But I'm really glad you reached out because I know you're a huge Kylie fan. But Matthew, I have to tell you, I know you're in the United States, right?
I am. I'm originally from Canada. I'm actually in the process of immigrating to the US because my husband is initially from here and he's just started a master's program back in the US, so we're making inroads to move back here. But so I'm from Canada, but I'm only in New York State, so it's still fairly close to where I was.
Fair enough. It sounds like great life goals there, but I just wanted to give you an idea about what's been happening in my world for the past 90 minutes, okay? And unfortunately for you, Matthew, you're the first person I've spoken to since all of this started. Are you ready to hear a story?
I'm ready, yes. Lay it on me.
Okay, well, actually, it goes back to yesterday. Okay, this is a chain of events. My daughter goes to the country to visit her family out there for Christmas. She's swimming in the pool. The pool's got too much chlorine in it. We all know that story as a kid. Burning, my face is burning. So she's come back, my face is peeling. What do? I open up the cupboards to find some exfoliant so that she can exfoliate her face. Hopefully that'll deal with the dry and peeling. And inside the door of the cupboard is an Australian huntsman spider. Do you know what a huntsman is? I don't know if you get them over there.
I don't think we have them, but I am familiar.
Yeah. I think they're mainly found in Africa and Australia, but they're the size of your hand. For those of you who don't know, they have 8 eyes and they're all stacked on top of each other, and they're intelligent bloody things. They really are. They stare at you with all 8 eyes, trying to assess what you're doing. And that's what it did. I opened the door. Australians are pretty cool and chill with spiders and stuff like that. I am not one of them. I don't know if I have that Australian gene. So I do the whole flailing of the arms. And my daughter marches in there to deal with it. And somehow she comes out and says, I've dealt with it. Okay, good. Where is it? Is it dead? Is it gone? Oh, no, it's in the bathtub. Now, anyone who's dealt with spiders before on a regular basis, like we do battle in Australia with a spider, a minimum of twice a year. Well, once it's in the bathtub, you're screwed because it's not going anywhere. It can't get out. A huntsman can't get out, at least. It can't. So I was hoping it might die overnight. To be honest with you, Matthew, it didn't. Now I've woken up this morning. I went in there and it's there. So what would you do? Like, what would an amateur do? Because it's probably what I did. What would you do at that point, Matthew? You've woken up. You're wiping your eyes. You look in the bathtub. Is it still there? Yeah, it's still there. What do you do?
What I do when we encounter spiders is I always get my guy to go shoo them out for me. So what I would do is I would probably ask for help. We don't have anything as big as huntsman where we are. So thankfully I've never had to deal with a spider of that volume. But I also am not very good with spiders, and I'm pretty outdoorsy in the summertime. Like, we like camping and hiking and being around nature, but spiders are the one thing I can't really deal with.
So when it was in the bathtub this morning, let's pretend for a moment you didn't have someone to run in there, like I did. Would you have just walked away and left it and hoped that God would take care of it, or what would you have done?
Maybe just close the bathroom door and just hope.
Definitely did that. Best. Well, okay, this is what I did, and everyone listening will go, "No, don't do that, Tim. Don't do that." Anyway, I took the shower head off the hook, and bravely, I may add, reached in and put the handle on the highest pressure it would go, and aimed it at the spider. And it put up a hell of a fight, and it's halfway down the drain pipe. Anyway, the legs are going, and I'm just like minutes. Like I've put it on the highest pressure. You can change from a sprinkle to a pressure hose. And I'm aiming at it. I feel like a Ghostbuster. I absolutely feel like I'm vaping. What's he called? Slimer out of Ghostbusters 1. And then I think, okay, and I turn it away. It's still fighting for life. It's got its arms all up, but it's refusing to go down the plug hole. Anyway, long story short, because I know it's getting boring, it's still in there. It's all mushed up. I think it might be dead. It's looking at me with lifeless eyes, but its arms are sort of up in the air and it's halfway down the plug hole and not. I don't know what I'm going to do because I have absolutely sprayed that thing. So the reason I'm telling you this, Matthew, is because I've come into the fortress of pop culture to meet you for the first time, but I'm all amped. I'm amped up. I've got the adrenaline going. I don't know where to put it, and it's probably going to come out and slap you in the face, and I apologize in advance.
I completely understand. If I had to deal with a spider invasion of that magnitude, especially as you said with the arms going and it refusing to leave despite the pressure you were spraying at it, I would be amped up too. So I completely understand.
The weird thing, Matthew, is that when the arms were all moving around, I'm thinking, oh, that's probably just the pressure of the water, like making it lifeless body move around, but it wasn't. Because then when I would turn it away for water, it was just moving. Oh God, it's horrible. Just go down the drain, you goddamn thing.
It honestly sounds like the stuff of nightmares.
Oh, well, it's making me feel sick. I hate killing things too. Ironic, I would never make friends with a spider. I refuse. But, because some people let them live in the house. Oh, they don't do any harm. I call it hide of a spider. No, not me. It has to go. One or the other. Either I'm moving out or it's moving out. So, but I do hate killing it. I feel really bad as well. So my feng shui or my karma or whatever you want to call it is all out of whack. But talking about Kylie will help.
Yes, I feel like that's always a good way to, inject your life with a little bit of positive magic is via Kylie. So I think that will
Absolutely. She's
definitely
pure
help with
joy.
the bad spider karma.
We deal with spiders. You've got Kim Kardashian, so I think we've got the better end of the deal.
I would agree. Yeah. Luckily,
Oh dear.
she's never been in my house. So
Really? Well, if she ever does, try to just bash her down the plug hole, but don't use a high pressure hose. Use a spade.
right, use something else. Yeah, I'll make a note of that just in case. I hope it never happens. So
Her legs will go down. She'll get caught at the ass, won't she?
that's she'll be using her ass to try to thrust herself back up, just like the spider with its little arms and legs going.
Matthew, I have to tell you this again. You're the sucker because a lot of my family are away for Christmas, and I've been on my own a lot. So you're really copying it here. I made a big mistake the other day, the day before yesterday. I love Demi Moore, and I know she's got a new movie out, and you probably haven't listened to the show enough to know that I don't do spoilers. So when I watch a movie, I literally don't know if it's a comedy, a musical, a horror. I don't know anything. Anyway, Demi Moore, I want to watch it. I pay for it, which is very hard for me, hurt my soul and my wallet. Paid for it because it's one of those you have to rent. You can't just stream it. Rented it, put it on. It's called The Injection or the serum. Anyway, it's basically
Substance?
it's the substance. That's the one. That's the one.
Right.
And I'm not joking to anyone who's watched this has to be as to, the first 5 minutes, Matthew. I'm going. This is just so awful. I was barely watching the screen. My hands over my eyes. I'm going. Yeah, yuck. That's just yeah. And it just gets worse minute by minute by minute. Towards the end, I was fetal on the ground. My daughter said to me after, why did you keep watching it? I went, well, I needed to find out what happened. And it is shocking. Anyone who's watched that would have to have PTSD like I do.
By the end of it, yeah. But you paid for it, right? As you said. So you had
that
to
was the other reason I had to keep watching.
Right.
Yes,
See
exactly.
It to the end.
So you don't even know me very well, Matthew, but that is exactly the psychological reason why I kept going is because I've paid $6 for this. I'm damn well going to watch it to the end. I'm not joking. Right. Anyone listening, do not watch it. It is like it's horrifying, but equally comedic too. If I had someone there watching it with me, I think it would have been maybe funny because it's so ridiculous. It's absolutely stupid, but it was horrifying to me. I've got surround sound. I needed to block my ears, block my eyes. I was rolling around on the floor. The neighbours must have thought to call the ambulance because I was screaming like, "Don't! Oh, you can't! Oh, you're kidding me! Oh, stop it!" Like I was screaming my head off, and it was Christmas Eve, I think, when I watched it. Big mistake, Matthew. Aren't you glad you came into the fortress to hear all this kind of palaver?
Yeah, I don't mind. I think, as you
You
said,
poor
it's
thing.
it's that time of year, right? And we all it's good to connect with other people and reach out and do different things. So I'm intrigued and also entertained about hearing about your adventures with the spiders and the substance and
All of
all
you
of
who
that.
romanticize, a lot of people write to me, "Oh, you make me want to come and live in Australia." Well, hasn't been that good. All right. Christmas Day, Christmas Eve, sunburnt on Christmas Day, Christmas Eve, Demi Moore did me damage. And now the spider, which has gone on, it's coming up to 24 hours of this spider incident. And I still don't know what I'm going to do with it. I'm worried if I put the vacuum cleaner into the plug hole and suck it up, that I'll get electrocuted because this is going to be wet there, right?
Right,
So
right.
even I won't go that far, but I'm going to have to do something. I'm certainly not going in there with a dustpan and brush. I refuse. I'm not getting anywhere near it. I have to be at least 3 meters away, which I don't know
Right.
how
You
many
have to have
feet
a
that
good
is. But
buffer.
I do. I need a buffer. Or you have a partner, do you? Who you'd send? I like that. I
I
like the
would.
way
Well,
you'd
it's
sacrifice a
funny.
partner.
We had a spider incident here, but I mean, it was like the size of a thumbnail, so it wasn't anything like a huntsman. But
Uh,
so we were watching TV, and my spouse said, "Oh, I could see him looking at something." I said, "What is it?" He's like, "It's nothing," because he knew that I would get freaked out. I'm like, "What is it? It's a spider, isn't it?" Like I could just tell. And he said, "Yeah, over by the door." And I looked, and it was just like a little, like I said, the size of a thumbnail on the back door. And I said, "Well, you'll have to get rid of it. I can't live. I can't have it stay here." So he went over, and I don't really know how he did it. I think he had like a piece of paper and kind of like scooped it up with the paper and then took it outside by the back deck or something. But
yeah.
I don't even watch the process myself.
No.
I just know that it gets
Why would
taken
you?
care of, and then I feel better about it. So
Well, see, I would love to criticize you for putting your partner into danger and to sending him into battle, but I did it with a 15-year-old girl yesterday. I said, you must go and get rid of it. You need to deal with that. If you want to exfoliate, you're going to have to deal with that. And it was
right, right,
crawling all over the place. And in Australia, there's this thing where people go, "Oh, the huntsman, oh mate, they're fine, they're harmless, mate. Ah, yeah, yeah, yeah." No, they're not. They're venomous, and they, especially if they're pregnant, they run. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I don't like the look of me, but they crawl towards me with all their 8 legs. They're meant to run away, is the theory, but they don't. They always run towards me. And I've had them fall on my head before. You know that beautiful scene in a movie where beautiful woman gets out of her satin sheets, her four-poster bed, and she goes to her high rise and she unveils the view by opening the beautiful curtains. You know, that sort of scene. Well, I did that
yes,
once. I wasn't a beautiful lady and I didn't have satin sheets, but I did exactly that. And I flicked open the curtains and a huntsman landed literally on the crown of my head. On the crown of
yeah.
my head, I ran around like a Looney Tunes cartoon, screaming, trying to flick it away, but not wanting to. It was horrible because it didn't just fall off my head; it stayed there until I eventually flicked it away. And then any Australian listening will know that one was a Tupperware job. I got the Tupperware and managed to, after an hour or two, get it into the Tupperware container and take it out to the garden and put it away. I think we're done with the spider talk, and I've got that off my chest. And I really appreciate the accidental counselling, Matthew. It's much appreciated.
No problem. I'm always happy to listen.
You're here to talk about Kylie, and I love talking to American Kylie fans because they used to be as rare as hen's teeth, as they say, but now they're a dime a dozen. America's gone crazy for Kylie.
They have. It's about time. I mean, I when I first got into Kylie, it was back in 2000 when Spinning Around came out, and nobody knew who she was at that point. At least, I mean, over here, obviously in the UK and Australia, that was a huge, huge hit. And I had discovered it kind of by accident. I was always more interested in music that was typically popular in the UK and Europe than what was going on in Canada and the United States. So I used to visit this forum when I was a kid called .music.com, and they would have different postings about what was going on in the UK charts. And one of the posts at the time was Kylie's comeback single "Spinning Around" is about to be released. And I remember when I read it, I thought, Kylie, that's an interesting name. I've never
Oh,
met anyone named Kylie, and I'd never heard of it. So I that intrigued me enough to look up the single and track it down. And I just remember that it was just such a fun and infectious song, Spinning Around, and it was just constantly stuck in my head. And I remember the summer of 2000 just playing that song over and over and over. Um, so I was hooked on that, and
it
that
was a very
made
summery
me.
song too, wasn't it? Very
It
summery.
was, and it's perfect for summertime, right? Like, it's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
fun and vibrant. So definitely when I think of Spinning Around, I always think back to that summer. And then I went to HMV in Canada. They would often have imports, and they had a copy of Light Years, which I guess it was released in Canada in, very limited
I believe it
quantities
was. Yeah, yeah.
anyways. But I think the copy I had was an import one, the UK one. So I got Light Years, and then I absolutely loved the album as well. So it wasn't like a case where, like, I
CD,
thought
vinyl, cassette.
CD back in that day.
Did
I
you
had the
know to
CD.
did you know to put your finger on the rewind button to get to the secret password track?
I didn't at first. Luckily, through the power of the internet and talking to other people, I discovered that there was an extra song. So
That's
that was
very cool, isn't
fun.
it? Very
Yeah,
cool.
and so I love that. So that's when I first got into her, and I didn't know anyone else that was, listening to Kylie then. And then, of course, the following year with when Fever came out, and Can't Get You Out of My Head happened, there was a huge influx of airplay, um, at least in Canada, with the Fever era singles. I know that Can't Get You Out of My Head was really big in America, and I believe that Love at First Sight, I think it was in the top 30, had done quite well as in regards to its chart success, not as much as Can't Get You Out of My Head. But over here, when I was in Canada, every time I would play Much Music, which was like our MTV equivalent, they were always playing all the videos for Fever, got tons of airplay. So Can't Get You Out of My Head, Come Into My World, In Your Eyes, Love at First Sight. Um, so at that point, a lot of other Canadian people were getting into Kylie. And I remember because I was still really young, right? I went into the CD store to get Fever, and I walked up to the counter and said, "Oh, everyone thinks Kylie is new, like because of Can't Get You Out of My Head, but I knew about her a whole year earlier because I had Light Years." Of course, and the funny thing is, I mean, lots of other fans had known her, since 1987 with Locomotion, and I Should Be So Lucky, and that era, the PWL era of Kylie. But at the time, my perception as a kid was that a lot of people were getting into her because of Can't Get You Out of My Head. But I was like, I knew about her a whole, year and a half or whatnot, before this. So,
And the person behind the counter was like, "Whatever, whatever."
they're like, sure, kid, whatever you say, here's your CD. Away you go. But
It
the
was
nice thing
interesting.
about
Go ahead, Matthew. You're right.
I was just gonna say the nice thing about that though was, the fact that I love those albums so much made me want to discover everything else she had done
Mm.
beforehand. So I remember right after I got Fever, I bought Kylie, the debut album, on cassette. I was at a flea market and I was so excited that
Now, what
they
did
had.
you make of it? Can I tell you something that always blows my mind, but no one else would care about? But when I'm sitting there having a little think, these are the things that I think about. I was there from the beginning, so I always say there was something magnetic about her, even in the Henderson Kids, and then especially in Neighbours. And then what? Kylie's releasing a song. So my journey's fairly what I would call typical, right? Watching her and the evolution of Kylie, and just having this freaking visceral, almost prophetic notion that she's going to be big, right? But I always fascinated to know if you came in at the point of light years was a light wave, then the tsunami of fever, padam padam, even Aphrodite to an extent, and then go back because how exciting. I wish I could live that life where I go, oh, I wonder if I'd still like it as much because a lot of music is about where you were at the time and that's why you like it, right? So when you listen to Kylie, the debut album for the first time, were you sort of scrunch face going, what? Or were you like, oh, this is good?
No, I really loved it. And I think I because the key ingredients were still there for me. That the elements that I really liked about Light Years and Fever were still present on the first album. You know, it's just very infectious, fun pop songs that just made you feel good. And I think the thing about why I loved Kylie is that there's something about the way she sings and her presence and the energy that she brings to those tracks really elevates them to me in a way that I find, really endearing and entrancing.
Tell
And
me
I
if you
just
agree with this, Matthew. Non-confrontational is what comes to me. Certainly, as a boy, when I examine why I had this connection with her before she even sang, and then especially when she was singing, I can't help but think, even though it's a little bit to my shame, it's because she's very non-confrontational. She's a geek as well. She's not cool. She absolutely not cool. She quirky and weird, actually at heart. And I think that we knew that, even though it's covered in a veneer of great glossy pop. I reckon she's geeky. You can still see it in interviews now. She can be a little bit awkward, but non-confrontational is what I get or when I examine it. Would you agree? Like, is that part of the reason you were attracted?
I think, and especially when you said quirky, like I feel like I've always liked things that are quirky or different, especially being from North America, right? That's why I
Mm,
was always looking for music that was popular in other parts of the world that weren't so much where I was. I didn't want, what was being crammed down my throat in North American radio didn't appeal to me. That's what everyone was listening to, right? I think I
yeah,
wanted something a bit different. And I liked the idea that she was huge in the UK and Australia because like I knew she was great just from listening to Spinning Around and then Light Years and then going through her back catalog. It was clear like this pop star, this singer, this performer, what she was doing was wonderful, and I'm glad that she was getting recognition for it. But there was also something, I guess, endearing about the fact that not everyone where I was knew about it. It was like a little secret, right? It was like this
yay.
this little secret treasure that I knew about, and not everyone did, and that almost made it more special in
Well,
some ways.
Matthew, that's the key. I speak to a lot of American Kylie fans, and that comes up time and time again. That they have this almost fantasy that over there, over the seas, in the other side of the world, she's this huge global, and she was, to be honest. But over there, she was something that only I knew about, or it almost felt that way at least. Yeah, pretty special, I've got to say. Pretty special.
Yeah, and that's how it felt. And then especially going into her back catalog, because when Can't Get You Out of My Head or Love at First Sight and the Fever era was, making huge waves in America, I was, and I loved that, and I loved seeing her get that recognition. But at the same time, when I was like listening to my little Kylie cassette, I can still remember songs like "Look My Way" or, "Got to Be Certain" or "Turn It Into Love." Like just being like, wow, this, even though this is, from quite an earlier era, it's still, really fantastic and really speaks to me. And then so I just went, through album by album
So you
until
did
I
do that? Did you go on a crusade to get the second album, the third album, and et cetera, et cetera? And if
right,
you
yeah.
did do that through imports, I'm really curious. Could you hear the evolution? And triple pronged question: if you could hear the evolution, where did you really go? Wow, wow! This is now the Kylie that I recognise from Light Years and Fever.
Probably Rhythm of Love.
Yay! I was hoping you'd say that. If you didn't, I would have been disappointed.
Okay, well, I'm glad I didn't let you down. Probably with Rhythm of Love, and then obviously on a huge wow with the deconstruction era, which I mean, I was listening to things before I had discovered Kylie, like Bjork and Massive Attack and Sneaker
Hmm.
Pimps. So trip hop and electronica and that those types of music I had already loved. So I can imagine, you read about stuff now that for the fans that were hardcore pop and dance music fans, I could see how the deconstruction era might have at the time like, whoa, this is so different, or maybe throwing them off a bit. But because I'd already loved those styles of music anyway, to then have Kylie, experiment with some of those sounds was really amazing to me. And so I absolutely love the KM94 and Impossible Princess records as well.
Hey, Time to Talk family, this is Tim Power, host of the podcast where amateurs talk about icons. To keep our show commercial free, we rely on your support. Many of you have chucked in just a couple of bucks, or sometimes more, which lets Time to Talk Australia pay its way. There's no obligation, of course. Keep listening to us no matter what. Liking and sharing our content is also a huge help. But if you do hear something that you like and you think you can support the show by throwing in a couple of bucks, head to patreon.com/Time to Talk Australia. The link is in the description of this podcast.
Hi Tim and Time to Talk listeners, this is Danny from Melbourne, and I'd just like to say your latest podcast made me very angry.
And as always, we want your voice memos. If you've heard something that you agree with, or possibly you're outraged, and let's be fair, many of you listen simply to be outraged, then take out your phone and record a voice memo. Cap it at around the 2-minute mark and then send it to me. I listen to all the voice memos that come through, and occasionally we include them in the show. Our email is timetotalkaustralia@outlook.com. Thanks for sharing, rating, contributing and donating to this very little podcast from Down Under. I genuinely love our little Time to Talk family because lovers of pop are an endangered species. So why don't we go extinct together?
So that's all I have to say. Get off the airwaves, you're such an amateur.
Absolutely. And I really love body language. So by the time that came out, I had kind of got caught up with the backlog of like
Yeah.
the back catalog of Kylie and discovered all that. And then I would remember Much Music again in Canada played the Money Can't Buy body language concert, and I remember like just laying on the floor in the living room and eyes glued to the TV, and because that's where I heard Chocolate for the first time, and
Wow.
Still Standing, and a lot of those tracks before I'd actually gotten the album, and remember seeing the video for Slow and Red Blooded Woman for the first time, and so that was
So you'd
really
gone from being the tortoise, now you're at the cusp. You're watching her live, so to speak, as she's doing her new projects. You're getting them as quickly as you can. So you were officially, by the time Body Language came around, you were one of us. One of us. One of us. You were a true Kylie fan.
yeah. And that makes me happy because I think about people. Sometimes a record will come out that is really big and they get it, but then by the time the follow up comes out, they're on to something else, or that interest has waned, or they're fallen in love with a different artist or a different hobby. I'm glad that when I discovered Kylie and delved into her work, that it had made enough of an impact that I didn't want that to ever go away, and that I was always equally as intrigued and enthusiastic and impassioned about what she was doing with the current projects.
Mm.
And I think that's why, all these years later, memories like watching, the body language videos debut on the Much Music countdown or whatnot are still very fresh in my mind, because I can, you remember that feeling of excitement.
Yeah. Well, like I say, a true Kylie fan because you're starting, well, you have and you do mark your life by Kylie eras, Kylie songs. And I can hear in your voice, Matthew, that this is much more than just, oh, I like her music and I like her style. I know that she's got into your bloodstream. So Kylie means a lot to you, doesn't she? It's more than just the music. Or what is it about Kylie that is so damn special to you?
I think it's what her music does for me that I like because I like lots of music and I reference some other stuff I'd listen to. And I like all different styles, but Kylie is really second to none for me and above anything else because there's just something about the way she sings. Genuinely believe the emotion or the feeling behind the songs, and it really, it impacts me on a very profound level, for lack of a better way of saying it. Like, and it works on two prongs. On the one side, it's great entertainment and I love listening to it and it always makes me feel happy and it kind of amplifies the good times in my life when I'm going through them. And when things have been difficult, I always find that there's something very intrinsically healing and comforting about Kylie. Like I remember um when I was going through a breakup once, and and this was at the time the relationship, it was a live-in relationship. So as you're breaking up, you're still living together temporarily as one is looking for other accommodations. So there's that awkward overlap, and there's just a lot of transitions going on, right? Because
Yeah.
you have mutual friends. So it's when you live with someone, I think as a couple, when that dissolves, it's not just the relationship, but the way your life is structured at the time also has to be reworked. So
And
it's
all your
just
hopes, all your dreams, all your plans. It's huge.
right.
Yeah.
It's very much a reconstruction of your life in that moment, and it causes a lot of upheaval. And within that upheaval, I remember feeling very overwhelmed at times, but I was listening to a lot of Impossible Princess, and this is actually also around the time Aphrodite came out, which was just such an uplifting record. So between her back catalog, especially the deconstruction era, and then the new album Aphrodite, I just remember with all that chaos going on, she just made me feel so grounded again and
Mm.
happy and comforted. And I think that that can be a very powerful thing when you can find something that in the midst of mayhem can make you feel very centered again and very happy. Like you don't forget that. And I think
Mm.
that's why Kylie means so much to me.
Interesting perspective, Matthew, too, that don't think until you said it, I'd really thought of it like this, that she's someone you can turn to, a friend, when the chips are down, but she's also someone that you want as part of your life when things are really good as well. And interesting, you pointed out Impossible Princess and Aphrodite around the same time because one is so uplifting and one is so almost melancholy, I would say, and introspective certainly. So yeah, I agree. She's got a place in your life no matter what is happening. I'm imagining if are you married? Did you say?
Yes, yes,
Was Kylie part of your marriage? Like
yes,
literally your wedding day?
yes. We of course played Kylie. Well, it was during the pandemic. We had a pandemic wedding, so we were listening to a lot of disco
What
around
does that
that
mean? You
era.
did it online.
Well, no, we got married and we were together, but because it was during COVID, we were only allowed 5 guests,
Oh.
and it had to be done outside. Luckily, we had a big backyard at the time. Not that you would need that big with 5 guests. And other people had to attend via Zoom that
Right.
weren't able to be there in person.
That's
So,
fascinating. I
we
hadn't
had
thought
to
of
do it like
yeah,
in
yeah.
that way. But I mean, we still have. I believe that. I think if you meet the right person, you make your own fun, right? You make your own happiness. So even though it wasn't big and extravagant, because of what was going on at the time. It couldn't be. We made it special regardless. And I think if you meet the right person, you're able to make, little things can be spectacular, which is going back to Aphrodite. It always makes me think of, the lines from Can't Beat the Feeling, like, you know what I mean? Like it's just, I always think of that.
Tell me, when you married your man, is he a Kylie fan too, or because that's a deal breaker, isn't it? You couldn't have walked down the aisle per se with somebody who thought Kylie was mindless fluff, as another guest said on this show not so long ago.
Absolutely, yeah. No, he's not a big fan of pop music in general, but this is, and so sorry, my mind's going. I'm thinking of many stories at once, but I'll stick to one. Um, I'll go back to this. It just reminded me of something else. But yeah, no, he's not a big fan of pop music in general. But what I do like is that, as you said, a lot of people who don't like certain artists are very quick to be dismissive. Oh, it's fluff. It's frivolous. It's vapid, et cetera, et cetera. He's never thought that about Kylie, and I think that he appreciates. Like he's always said, like, she's a great performer. She's a very talented live singer. She always sounds good. Because he's watched all of her concert DVDs with me.
Or
and
did he
we'll
have a
watched.
choice? Did he have a choice?
Yeah, I wouldn't have made him, but I think it's nice that, he has done, sat down and always done it with me. So, and I remember like when we first met, like I would play him videos. Like I remember when Magic came out, I'm like, oh, Kylie has a new video. I have to show you this, or, you know, things like that. So I think, although obviously he doesn't love her as much as I do, which would be a tall order, he definitely has not only an appreciation for what she does, and can definitely see that, there is talent there and it's not fluff. And he does certainly, he likes Jump a lot. He does like a lot of the deconstruction era stuff.
So you're giving me a good sense about his musical tastes now. So the Impossible Princess, probably a little bit of KM94 to his liking.
Right. Though he does, he'll randomly sometimes I'll catch him saying like "shocked" or something, like one of the, the really, or "what do I have to do?" Like one of they'll get stuck in his head, one of these earworms. And actually recently, because it was Christmas, him and my mother-in-law, we all watched the Kylie Christmas at Royal Albert Hall
Yay!
together too.
It's got to be part of our Christmas, doesn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, the people in my life definitely appreciate her, and also have an appreciation for what she means to me.
And all of this in the United States. As a little boy, I only could have dreamed she'd be so knitted into the fabric of US culture. Thank you, Matthew, for helping it happen.
I try. I used to have Kylie nights with some friends, and we would watch the different concerts. So I had a friend who was really into Lady Gaga, and he didn't really know much about Kylie. I think he knew "Can't Get You Out of My Head," and I said, well, you know what? I think you would really like her. Come over. And, we started having these Kylie nights, and now he is a big fan, and he's been buying like all her albums like over the years as they've come out. And he messaged me when Tension 2 came out and told me he had bought a copy. And
you're
that
a
just
Kylie converter, aren't you? You should open a business.
I tried to this year too. I'll send you a photo later, because I've been sending out Kylie CDs and tapes and vinyl to people all over. I've sent out quite a few this year. So different people I've met online or that I've talked to, some who are casual fans, some who are just kind of getting into her. Like my brother-in-law's girlfriend, I gave her a copy of Tension.
Oh, Matthew,
I love sharing it with others,
I've solved the riddle of who you are now. I love it. Because I've been like this all my life too. I annoy people. Because my belief is that if you say anything critical of Kylie, it means that you just haven't been properly educated in the subject. So I do what you do. It's like, okay, and then I get to know the person a little bit, and I then select from 35 years worth of archival talent, and I handcraft a little selection for them. So yeah, you and I are quite the same like that.
We're Minogue missionaries.
Exactly.
Right. Well, I just think if you love something and it means a lot to you, then it inspires you to want to share that with other people because you're like, this makes me feel really happy or it makes me feel good, and I want you to have a chance to experience that, and
It's
hopefully
really
you'll
interesting.
find something.
Even people who won't convert to liking the music, and we both respect that. Some people just aren't going to be into pop music so much. But when they see her live, like I always think of the Honest Vocal Coach, who has been on this show, actually. She's an English YouTuber. And I can tell she's not a big fan of Kylie's voice. She's very polite. She doesn't really go there in inverted commas, but she basically says, she's got good technique and control and breath control, but she just doesn't like the tone, which some people don't. They don't like Kylie's tone. But whenever she does a review of anything live, like she smiles from ear to ear and she does rave at that point. So it's not just about Kylie's voice. It's her as a performer. You said it earlier yourself. She knows how to tell and sell a story in a song. She's very authentic. She seems very connected with her music. And yeah, she's an all-round entertainer. So one of the ways that what did you call us? A Minogue missionary needs to function is if you've got a tough nut that's hard to crack, you got to put them in a big sack, make sure they've got oxygen, and then drag them to a Kylie concert. Because I reckon if you came out of a Kylie concert not thinking, wow, that was fun, I think there's something slightly wrong with you.
Oh my God, yeah. Like I can't even imagine how you could
Hey,
not.
have you been to a Kylie concert?
Of course. And
But
I saw her
in Vegas.
No, I was supposed to go to Vegas and I had tickets to go, and I got sick the day my plane was supposed to leave from Canada.
No,
And
must have been
I
badly sick.
was devastated beyond belief. So, to make myself feel better, I bought a ticket for the Hyde Park gig and I flew over to the UK to see her
Wow.
for that because I was just like, I'm not waiting for her to come back.
Did you take your husband?
I couldn't because
I had a feeling you left him behind. There was just something in the way you said that.
Yeah, no, he had commitments with work. He couldn't, but he was very supportive. He's like, "Listen, I know this is something
What's
you've
his
got to
name?
do." Christian.
See you, Christian.
He'll appreciate that. But yeah, like he was very supportive, and I was like, "Listen," like he knew how devastated I was about missing the Vegas one. So,
Yep.
I
So Hyde
went
Park
over.
was the first time you saw her?
Yes, because when I was in Canada, not only was I in a country she didn't often visit, but I
Yep.
was like in a rural area,
Right.
far from Toronto or Montreal, and I wanted to see her when she did the 2009 tour, and then also for Aphrodite, and it fell through. And I remember what I said earlier, I would have these Kylie nights with my friends, and we would drink wine and we would watch her concerts, and I would get emotional and I would cry when she would do Somewhere Over the Rainbow or All the Lovers or some of those songs. And I would joke with my friends. I said, I don't care what happens. One day I will see her live. Like I'm not gonna just experience this on a screen.
Whenever I listen to Tim and his panel of guests, my toes begin to curl, and I feel just the right amount of tingling all over my aching body. Now, let's get back to the show.
I mean, what a way to start. Hyde Park, what an atmosphere for a start. Go on, tell us what it was like to experience the woman that you admire so much and who's been such a part of your life live. I mean, you must have been having a conniption.
I was. So, yeah, I'm going to try to articulate it because it's hard to put it into words, right? So I flew over to the UK. Also, I'm not a fan of flying.
Me either. I hate it.
I'm like, I'm going to do this. I have to see Kylie. So I got a Diamond VIP area ticket and I left first thing in the morning, queued up all day, and I managed to get right at the very front of the barrier. So I couldn't be any closer to the stage than I was. And a friend of mine who I had never met before, but I had known on Instagram, his name's Aiden. And so if you're listening
he's from Canada.
Yes. So he's
Aiden's
also
been on this show a lot. He doesn't like me anymore.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Because I was rude. Look, Aiden, if you're listening, because I'm sure he's not, but maybe you can pass him a message. he contributed. Sorry to promise to come back to your Hyde Park. He was on. I feel really bad about this. I really do, because he came on and did a retro review of Golden, and he had the same experience as you. He was about to go to the tour and got sick. I think he was going to Scotland from memory.
Right, he was, and he told me that, and so that's kind of how we connected, because we had
Right.
this similar experience. We're like two Canadians. We had
Yes.
loved her forever, but we had never had the chance to
And
see
you've
her
done
because
the
of A, B,
hard
and C.
yards, because you've got to buy by import. And he's a wonderful guy, really nice guy. I've been on the show quite a few times, but basically, he never told me. But I assume it's because the editors at the time they put a sad music violin over his story of not being able to see Kylie, which probably, when I listened back, made it sound like we were mocking his experience, which we shouldn't have. And we apologise, Aidan, if that's what it was, because Aidan just cut ties with us. So sorry about that, Aidan. Hand on heart, you're an extremely nice, intelligent man. But anyway, you met
I
up
will
with
pass that
Aidan.
along.
Yeah,
So, yeah, so
you met up with him at Hyde Park, and then that
well,
must
no,
have been
I
nice.
met him in Toronto, so we
Oh,
flew over together because I was like, listen, we're both in this situation. I've never got to see her, and I've loved her forever, and I don't know how that's even happened, but I'm in rural Canada, like around nothing. She comes to North America finally. I get sick and miss it, so that's why I said I'm going to the UK. I'm not going to wait for her to come back this time. I'm like, because what if she doesn't? Obviously, that's not the case, with the tension to her being announced. But I couldn't wait for an announcement. I had to go. So I said to him, my husband Christian doesn't. He can't come. I don't know if I want to travel alone. Do you want to come with me? So I bought him a ticket for the show so we could go together. And that way, too, I knew if we left early in the morning, if there was two of us, we could kind of hold our spot together easier.
lovely.
So
Yeah,
we could queue up together. And I said that way we'll get hopefully a really good spot, because Hyde Park is massive, right?
yeah.
I didn't go in thinking I'd get right, front row of the stage, right up against the barrier. I was hoping, but we managed to get it. We made friends with everyone around us. Everyone was super sweet and nice. Like, all the other Kylie lovers were just so pleasant. And then, so we're waiting all day, and then finally she comes on. It's almost surreal. It's
Mm,
super surreal, actually,
mm,
because I've been listening to her like since, like, it's been like over 20 years, right?
yeah.
And as you said, like, there's so many memories and life moments associated with those songs and those albums, and seeing her on YouTube and DVD and in music video for all that time, to finally see her that close right in front of you, it was so amazing. It's
Mm.
hard to put into words. And I cried and cried when she walked on that stage. Um, yeah, it was so emotional. And then I remember at the end of it, I can't remember who it was because it was all a blur, but there was another Kylie fan, and they were walking. Oh, they just came up to me. They were wearing one of the Padam Padam jumpsuits, and said, "Oh my God, how was it?" And I think I just like kind of gave them a hug and like just kind of bawled and said, "Oh my God, like, it was so amazing. I'm just
Well,
so happy
Matthew,
to be here." And
here in the Fortress, you're talking to people who do know. You might be saying you can't put it into words, but we know what that means, because I've seen every tour. But whenever I get, and I've never met her in real life, anything like that, and I don't think that would make a difference. Whenever you're in her presence, because she's a daily figure in our lives, and I'm sure she is for you by the sound of it, and she becomes a friend, right? So when she's there, it is I can't exactly what you're trying to put into words. I know what you mean. I can't put it into words either. It's like so weird to see someone go from your television right there in front of you, and I always go down a wormhole, like a memory wormhole. I'm like, I remember you from On the Go when you wore that hideous cinnamon leotard, and I've been with you every step of your career as you've negotiated. As I'm looking at her live, that's what's going through my head, and it's overwhelming.
so that was amazing, obviously. And then in a few months ago. I'm trying to think when it was now because it was such a blur. I think it was at the end of October. I did get a chance to meet her, which was incredible. Yeah, it was at the end of October. So what happened was, I don't know if you recall, there was a signer, like a meet and greet at Rough Trade Records in New York City was announced.
Can I tell you,
So,
Matthew? Can I just tell you why I'm chuckling? We did a podcast about this because quite a few people reached out to me about the famous F word that was dropped during that signing, apparently. And you only saw it if you were up the front of a line. It sounds like you weren't. But yeah, apparently she did let off an F bomb and slam a door or something along those lines anyway. So yes, I'm aware of the event, definitely.
so yeah, I did not get to go to that one. I saw it announced, and I said, so
Oh,
I was
right.
in New York State at the time, and then I see it, and I'm like, oh my God, Kylie's going to be in New York City. I'm mere hours away. Listen, like maybe I'll actually have a chance to meet her. So in a tizzy, I'm like scrambling around trying to go on the Rough Trade website or the link they had where you could buy the tickets to go to the event, and they were sold out almost instantly. And I was so heartbroken because I was thinking like how could this happen? Like I'm in New York State, she's going to be here, she's so close, and now I have no chance to see her. And I emailed Rough Trade and I said, listen, this sold out so quick. There's such a demand. Are you going to release more tickets? No, unfortunately, we're not. And so I was so depressed that day, and I sulked all afternoon. And then just as I'm going to bed, I get an email from SiriusXM saying I had won a contest to attend the Kylie
No
listening
way.
party in New York City. And I was like, yeah, that's what, and I never win anything. And I was like thinking, no way, this can't be real. And then, so I, emailed them back saying, of course I'm going to attend. And then I'm like thinking, did I read this wrong? Like, is this just a listening party? It says Kylie Minogue listening party. Am I just going to get to hear Tension 2 a few days early before the album comes out, which of course would be amazing in itself because that's what it's about, the music. And then so I tried to have no expectations. So I get on the train from where I was, go into New York City. I get there, I go down to the Rockefeller Center, and then they bring you up. I think there's maybe like 50 fans in total, so it wasn't huge. And we go up to the top floor, one of the top floors of the Rockefeller Center, and you go in this room, and there's like these little like couches or bleachers type things, and we're sitting there, and there's this little glass room in front of us, like an air studio, and there's two chairs, and there's an interviewer, and then Kylie comes out, and she's like right in front of you, right,
Wow.
with just this little bit of glass in between, and they interview her, and then they're like, hey, who wants to come in the room and listen to the album? So then they bring us into this little glass room, so now you're even closer to her, and they played the new album, and she talks about each track. And I remember when she introduced Taboo, she said, now I bet some of you people have done some taboo things. And I said, Kylie. And she looked right at me, and I said, Kylie, you would not believe the amount of taboo things I had to do just to be here tonight. And she laughed and smiled at me, and she said, well, don't worry. Whatever happens at the Kylie listening party stays at the Kylie listening party. So I'm like
Awesome.
thinking, this is so surreal. Not only have I talked to her, I made her like laugh and smile. And then she literally went to the crowd and were dancing with her. And then after that, she leaves and says goodbye. And then the organizer said, how would you guys like to meet her? And of course, everyone wants to. So then at the end, they have her at the front, and they line us up, and we go up one at a time. So I go up to her.
Had you planned what you were going to say? You had some time in the queue to think about what am I going
I
to say?
did a little bit because I
Yeah,
didn't want to be like a complete rambling on.
totally.
And so I noticed the people were going up, and then they're like, you know, the kind of standing beside her quickly, and they would take your picture with her, and then you would go. So I was kind of observing like what was happening, like people weren't touching or anything. So I didn't want to be, you know, inappropriate, or I'm kind of going with the flow, right, of what
You
the
weren't going to reach
setting
out for a
seems to
hug.
be. Right. As
Yep.
much as I'd want to, but
Yep.
I'm
Yep.
kind of gauging how she's interacting with fans and wanting to be completely respectful of that. So I go up to her, and I and this is so surreal now. Like, she's right in front of me. I can look into her eyes, and I just said, Kylie, I want you to know that you're not just a pop star to me, but that your music means so, so much to me. And I said to her that a few years ago, right before disco came out, my mom passed away unexpectedly, and then I lost my father a year later. And your music and that album coming out at during that time was such a gift. And during all these difficult things, you've always brought me so much comfort and healing. And she looked at me and she said, thank you so much for telling me that. And she looked really genuinely moved. And I think the reason she said thank you to me is I think it made her feel really good to know that what she does has such a positive impact on her fans. And then she reached over and hugged me, which was very
Wow.
unexpected. So
Yeah.
I gave her a little hug back, and then I told her I loved her, and I got my picture with her. And as I was walking out, a couple of the fans came up to me and said, "She hugged you. Why I didn't get a hug? What did you say to her?" And then I told them just, briefly what I had said to her, and they're like, "Oh wow, that's amazing." So then I called a Christian, and then I called my mother-in-law, because my mother-in-law who said, just let me know that it went okay and that you're safe and everything, being in New York City. And so I called her, and I started like crying and crying. And at first she's like, oh my God, like what's wrong? Like, did something happen? But I was just genuinely overwhelmed. I was just like, "Oh, I just met Kylie, and she was so sweet, and she gave me a hug, and she was so lovely." And so, yeah, it was just,
Wow.
like, from so July to October, not that far away from seeing her like so close at Hyde Park, to then dancing with her basically in this little room and going up to talk to her and getting a hug. Like, it was
These are
really.
amazing experiences, Matthew. And I love in that story almost for confirmation that this work is a life force for her as well. Because when you said you looked into her eyes and she seemed genuinely moved, she was, because it can't be coincidence. I hear that time and time again. There's no way she'd last and want to, not last, but there's no way she'd want to keep doing this work unless she knew she was touching the energy and the lives of the people that get to bask in her work, So I'm so glad you got to see that up close and personal. I think that's incredible.
It was, and like you said, I agree 100%. I mean, she's made her millions. She's had amazing commercial success. What other reason would there be for her to continue doing it, unless there were, genuine reason in terms of fulfillment and what it does for her to want to
Well,
continue.
not to get too deep about it, and I know people who listen to this show, they sometimes go, "Oh God, you overthink things, Tim." And yeah, I do. It's just my nature. But I do believe she's the definition of humanitarian, Kylie. I've always said on this show, and people have mocked me for it, I think she has one of the highest EQs, emotional intelligent quotients that I've come across. That comes through in so many ways, and I've walked her path with her forever. And the way she puts other people, she's so attuned to the energy of other people. And this is rare in the world of celebrity, because they're usually worried about how they feel. You can see it in the body language of celebrity photos, for example, the way that they like hold themselves, like literally they're not comfortable. And fair enough too. I'm not having a go at celebrities for that, but Kylie, though, she's much more focused on the energy of the people around her rather than her own. And I find that unbelievable. Like with your story, there it was. She was invested in you. She wasn't talking about herself or her album or her music, talking about you. And that's what gets her excited, and that's what exhilarates her. And I love her for that. I think that nails why I love Kylie. Thank you for that story. Can I ask, you've clearly been through some hard times recently. Your parents, you said, passed away unexpectedly.
Yes, my mom in 2020, she was going on vacation, and it was actually Chris and I were the last people to see her. We dropped her off at the airport, and then unfortunately she had a medical emergency on the plane and didn't make it. So as we were expecting,
She didn't have health issues or anything.
she had some health issues, but didn't not to what we thought, right?
Right,
Like
right.
you don't expect it to be like that. And she was they were I thought her health issues were being mitigated. Like she had hypertension, and we know that she was at risk of, heart disease, but I didn't expect that she was going to have like a fatal heart attack that
Mm.
abruptly. You know what I mean? You never think that.
Was she still
So
with your dad when she passed?
she wasn't, no. So it was just, and a lot of, because my dad had passed away so shortly after, people often think when
Yes.
it gets brought up that is it because they were together, and it was, it's that sort of heartbreak on him, or that loss on him took a toll. But no, they hadn't been together for years and years. It was just one of those things, completely unrelated, but just in terms of proximity of time, just very close together. Um, so yeah,
What happened to
it's
your dad,
surreal, and
Matthew?
he had a drug overdose, so he wasn't in a good
Right,
place and hadn't been for a long time. But again, because of his issues, I hadn't seen him for a while,
right.
because it's hard, like, because my life was very different from what unfortunately happened to him. Like he hadn't been in a good headspace for a while, and me and my brother had not seen him for quite a while because of that, because we're trying to maintain our own lives, and I guess protect it in a way from things that could come about from that sort of nature, that sort of culture he was involved with, for lack of a better word. So, but again, I guess that disconnect breeds some ignorance, where you just don't realize it's as bad as it is, or you don't think it is. So it was quite unexpected when you get the news, right?
Sometimes amateurs know best, and a lack of professionalism is all you'll hear on the Time to Talk show. Join Tim and his panel of guests as they wade their way through a range of news, music, and pop culture treats. Time to Talk, the show hosted by amateurs for unprofessional listeners.
When you lose both your parents, no matter what the relationships were like, where does that leave you? How does that feel, and how does it manifest?
It's hard to put into words. Like, you can see the loss of a loved one portrayed in a movie, or you can read about it, or something, but I had never lost anyone close to me before. So it's so surreal initially, because it's something you've never experienced, and it's hard to wrap your head around it. And then it brings about, all sorts of emotions, grief and sadness and regret, and why didn't I make more of an effort to see them, or you know what I mean? Like, it stirs up so much. It can be really overwhelming. I think that I was so lucky in the fact that I had Christian, so I had a really loving partner who's very caring, to help take care of me. And then my mother-in-law, her and I were already close, and I get along with her very, very well. Obviously, that kind of brought us together even more. And then my grandparents and I were always very close, and then that, I think further brought us together. So I think that having that, all those support networks in place is really important, and definitely helps.
You've got a very maternal mother-in-law, by the sounds of it.
She is, very much, yes.
Yeah. You're lucky, man. You're very lucky. Most mother-in-laws, it's not the case.
No, I tell her all the time, like, and I call her Ma. Like, I never call her by her name.
What do you call her? Sorry, Ma.
Ma, like Emma, like whenever I say, I'm like, hey Ma, or like, Ma, can we do this today? She's always up for it. So, and she knows I absolutely love Kylie. And so, yeah, I think that having all those things are really important. And then, of course, like I said, I turned to Kylie and her music, and my mom and my grandfather are both huge music fans, and like that was the thing that made them the most happy or
What were they
excited.
both
Like
into? Well,
my
can
grandfather.
yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, you can ask if you.
No, please. Yeah, tell me what
Okay.
they're into.
So my grandfather is a massive Elvis fan and
Uh-huh.
has been all my life. So as a little kid, I had heard and seen every Elvis everything.
Oh, this is a very good education. I love the bass line. This is good. Yep.
And then my mom was like a huge rock fan and like absolutely loved Pearl Jam.
Oh.
And then there was me who, interestingly enough, like I was never a huge pop fan. Like all my peers when I was younger, they were in love with Britney Spears or Christina Aguilera or Beyonce. None of the American pop stars ever really
You sound
interested
like you're
me.
more attracted to Europop, though, to me, by default. Sounds to me like, because
Yes,
there is a big difference. People might not
there
realize it,
is,
but
yeah.
there is. Yeah.
And to be fair, I did like the Spice Girls and
Uh-huh.
Aqua and stuff, but um
Point
a
made.
lot of the US pop I just never really appealed to me. And then my when I was into the Spice Girls, who were popular in Canada and the US when I was a little younger before discovering Kylie, like my mom couldn't stand it. She just hated them. But and her being such a rock fan, right? Like she's just like, oh, this pop music, it's just awful. But
Yeah.
when I got into Kylie, I remember the audience with Kylie, the one she did during the Fever era.
Mm-hmm.
We were lucky that it got aired in Canada on Much Music, and she watched it with me. And even her being a fan of rock music and typically hating pop, she said, like, she had nothing bad to say watching her. She said, well, it's not really my thing, but I can't deny she's very talented. She has great stage presence. She can sing live. She puts on a good show. And later she would end up owning a campground, and there was a little stage area, and they would often have she'd put on like mixes for them for dancing and things, and there was always a couple Kylie songs on
Oh,
there.
go,
And
mum.
I never even asked her to do that. And I remember like looking through, and I came across Can't Get You Out of My Head and stuff, and I was
Oh,
like, oh, there's
no.
Kylie on here. And she's like, well, it's I can't lie, it's such a good song and people like it. And so I
You
love that
infected
about,
her. I love it.
yeah. That's what I was saying too, like earlier with Christian too. Like I feel like people, even if you don't like pop music, you can definitely appreciate what she does. I think
Oh, yeah.
if you
There's
look
an
at it.
integrity to it, because I think if people like your mum who are into, Pearl Jam, Nirvana, I feel like they are very authentic people and they want the real thing sort of thing. I don't know if I'm putting that into words very well,
No,
but
I get it.
it's true. Like they don't like the manufactured is the best way of putting it. And I think when you watch Kylie, even though you might get there's a mechanics behind it, someone wrote this song to be a bestseller, da 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 da. There's an authenticity when she gets her hands on it. So I think your mum probably saw that.
I think so, definitely. And that's what I said too, that I think even as myself when I first came across her, again, there's the way she sings. You believe it. I believe what she's singing, that she wants to make people feel something, whether it's joy or happiness or how to work through something. So, yeah, when I lost, so it was sort of fitting in a way, in a bittersweet way, that when I lost my mom, I think that she would have been happy to know that I used music as a way to process that, because music is what she loved more than anything, just like my grandfather. And it's like, whenever we had get-togethers, we would always have music on, and we would always play like when I visit my grandfather, like I will always play Elvis for him, but I always sneak in some Kylie, and and I think that they appreciate it. And it's same with my mom when we would visit. We would often talk about music or like and things like that. And there was nothing she loved more than going to a concert. So I think
Mm.
that when she was gone, that it would she would have found it, I guess, endearing. I think that
How did it get you
my
through, though,
way of
Matthew? Like, how did Kylie's music effectively help you through
I
those
think what you
times?
do is you it was deep listening to it and tapping into something that it told me that I'm trying to think, like it's hard to articulate, right? Because it's a big,
Yeah.
it's a lot of But what happened was, I think when I was listening to disco around, because that was the same year that my mom passed, disco came out a little later. When I would sit and listen to that, there's sort of like this underlying feeling that I would get from her music that was comforting, so it allowed me to feel comforted enough to deal with the emotion, so it wasn't so overwhelming or allowing yourself to get completely devastated, or falling apart, but that you could have a moment of like, it's okay. Like it provides you enough comfort that there's something reassuring there. It's like, you will be okay. It will be all right. Like that. Yes, these things happen, but you can soldier on, not to diminish that loss by any means or diminish that grief, but just to kind of also take stock of, you know what, this happened and it's sad, but there's just this probably sounds really cheesy, but whatever. This is how I feel. There's still so much, good things around and so much beauty, and
Mm.
like I have a lot of good things in my life, and I like to think I am a silly, happy person overall. And that's how my mother-in-law and Christian and my friends would probably describe me, as a silly, kind of happy person. And I think my parents would not want me to lose that.
Yeah. And I've got to say, disco in particular is like a warm embrace. Maybe I remember it like that because COVID was such a dark time, like stuck in homes and doing things virtually, and this was new at the time. It did feel like a warm embrace from Kylie to all of us. Can you tell me briefly what type of woman was your mother?
She was kind of like me in a lot of ways, like very like, I feel like free spirited. Like she loved music and having people around and dancing and just like and like I said, and she owned a campground, and it was just a place that we would all get together and have fun. Like that's what I think of when I think about her, is just those kind of moments, right?
Mm,
And because of that too, I know that she wouldn't, you know, I've seen other people go through grief, and sometimes it can destroy you. And I've seen people where like it can, it can take them to a really dark place. My mom was not like that, and I was not like that before, and I refused to kind of go down that path. You know
yeah.
what I mean?
She
I
wouldn't
want
want
to.
that for you, though, right? That's
No, and she wouldn't, and nor would the people,
yeah,
Christian wouldn't want that for me, or so. I
yeah.
think that that's what Kylie always kind of reminds me. Like you said, it's like a warm embrace, and sometimes you just need that infusion of positivity just to help you at least, get you over the hump, so to speak, or to help you just keep going forward until things start to feel a bit better.
In the evening, when the kettle's on for tea, an old familiar feeling settles over me, and it's your face I see, and I believe that you are there in a garden.
For what it's worth, it's my belief that your parents are still with you. You'll be having moments in your life where you think, this is the conversation I'd probably be having with my mum or possibly your dad. They'll always be part of your life, Matthew, and I love the fact that you've got great people around you who are supporting you through it. And she clearly raised you well, or your parents raised you well, because you sound so grounded and you just sound delightful, to be honest. So, I mean, that's a testament to your mother and your parents and your family and the way you were brought up. Does it go without saying that you are going to be stalking Kylie across the United States come April, is it, or March, April?
Yes. I have tickets to a couple different Tension shows, and I'm trying not to think about it right now because then I feel like it just drags the time, and I just want it to hurry up and be that time.
How
again where I
many
could
cities are you going to? Come on, open up, confess.
It's not as many as some fans because, again, my husband just started a master's program, and so that's very expensive, and I want to make sure he's taken care of and everything. But I'm going to the Madison Square Garden show because
Fantastic.
that I just feel will be an iconic.
It will.
for
It's going to
her.
be one of the highlights of her life, of her
Right,
professional
and
career. Yeah.
right, and so I just had to go to that, so I'll be there, and then I'm going to the Boston show as well.
Hmm. Okay, well, that's pretty good. That's not too bad. I've heard the tickets are selling beautifully as well, contrary to some ridiculous social media rumors that go around. So that's fantastic. Who would have thought? I never would have dreamt that Kylie would conquer the United States, and we can officially put the flag in the ground. She has conquered because she's going to every city, basically all the main places, and crisscrossing around. It's unbelievable at this stage of her career. Unbelievable.
Well, she really deserves it. I mean,
Yeah.
and I'm so happy. When I saw the tour dates, like I think sometimes being a Kylie fan, I use the analogy. It's a bit like a sports fan cheering for their team, like when their team. I don't follow sports myself.
I was about to say, this
but-
is about as close to sports as you and I get, I think.
Yeah, but I don't follow them myself, but I've seen people do it, and they're always rooting for their team, or like when their team wins, it's like this moment they feel very celebratory. That's
Mhm.
kind of how I feel like when the Tension 2 went to number 1 in the UK and Australia. Like that's like the equivalent of my team winning, or when the tour was announced and you see like she's going to do this huge tour across the US and all over the world. Like that's kind of how I feel. Like I love seeing her accomplishments, and you can't help but feel happy for her. So that's kind of how I look at it.
So stay tuned, Matthew, because we're going to be going through the ultimate Kylie Tension set list. I want you to listen to that podcast. We're running out of time here, but I am curious. What is give us 3 songs that absolutely cannot be left off the Tension tour list.
For me personally, or in general?
You personally. That's a good point, because otherwise people go, can't get you out of my head, spinning around.
Well,
all
I would
the
say
lovers.
you'd have to have all the lover. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That was the first. These
But
are
personally,
ones
what do you want? What 3 songs do you want her to play just for you?
I would say "Love Affair" from Fever.
Oh, lovely.
I would absolutely love to hear that live. "Jump" from Impossible Princess.
I don't think we've heard Love Affair, even at the anti-tour.
No, I don't. And that's why I would just. I've always loved that song so much.
It's brilliant. Yeah. What was the second one? Did you say Impossible Princess?
"Jump" from Impossible Princess.
Yep.
And then lastly, I would die if she did "Flower."
Oh, that'd be lovely, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, I really love that song. I think it's just so beautiful, and it just really always,
Very
hits
sad
me
song.
emotionally. Yeah,
Yes.
it's very touching. So,
Hey, Matthew, how have you felt being here in the fortress of pop culture?
oh, lovely. I mean, I'm always down to talk about Kylie, and it's always nice, to share that passion with someone, as you said yourself. Often there's times I'd say it's hard to articulate and put it into words, but you said it beautifully that, all the other, like the real Kylie fans out there will know exactly what I'm talking about, and know exactly about what I'm trying to say because they've experienced it too. So
Oh, yeah.
sitting down with you has been wonderful because I can again hear from you your voice, how much she means to you, and connecting with another fan who obviously she's meant so much to you for so long. It's lovely. So thank you.
She sure does. I can't wait to see her, look her in the eyes again. I'm so psyched for it. I can't even tell you. I'm a bit like you. It's like, can't we just skip January so we can get through?
Yeah, just so we can get on with it already.
Yeah. Now, Matthew, do you know what I'm about to go and do? Do you want to guess? It's 10 a.m. in the morning here.
Are you going to have to go do battle with the spider?
I've decided psychologically I'm going to go and get myself an iced coffee because it's bloody hot here in Australia. I hate talking to people from the UK. They just don't get it. Like, I can't sleep at night. It's sweaty. It's horrible. I've ordered
What
myself
is the
a cool-
temperature there right now?
Well, I don't know what it is in Fahrenheit, but it's basically...
Well, I'm from Canada initially, so we
perfect.
use
Well,
Celsius
40 degree is pretty much standard at the moment. And
Oh, wow. Okay,
but it starts
that's
at 5
pretty-
in the morning when it starts. You can't open the window even in the middle of the night. God, I'm going to get on my soapbox. You've really got me up there now, but I just can't. I've got the fan and that's about it. And look, I'm a bit over it. I love the heat. I swim every day in a place that looks like an island. So that is the highlight of my day. So basically, to go back to the point, I'm going to go and get myself an iced coffee, a really strong one with maybe even 3 shots in it because of what I have to do. And I'm going to come back. And I don't know what I'm going to do, though. Someone needs to tell me. I'll keep everyone updated. I'm not touching it, though. I refuse.
I think you should, if you need, you should listen to Mighty Rivers or something for inspiration. If you need to, if you have to dig deep to go do battle with the spider.
Okay, that's a good idea. I'll fortify myself with some Kylie attitude, or Aphrodite even. I'm a golden girl. I'm an Aphrodite. All right. All right,
Yes.
I'll be saying that while I'm poking it with a stick, trying to force it down the drain. I'm a golden girl. I'm an Aphrodite. Ew! Thanks, Matthew.
Thank you so much.